So hey, welcome back to the channel. Right now I'm showing you my 75 gallon. Something I want to talk about today is the algae problems that a lot of people have with their tanks. And sometimes I don't understand why. Sometimes it gets out of control. They don't understand what's going on. The tank I'm showing you right now, I hardly ever clean the glass off or have any issues with algae of any kind. You will see some algae, very little here and there. You see some on the plant leaves. Might see some on the rocks. Nothing, nothing heavy. And you might see some growing on the glass, very little. And like I said, this tank has not been cleaned, or at least scrubbed off in any way for the longest. I would say months. I do water changes on this tank once every month and a half, every 2 months. I do large water changes, about 60 to 80% water changes on this tank. Okay, and I top it off with RO water. And I'll tell you why I do that in a little bit. My other tanks, this is my 20 gallon. You can see a little bit of algae here and there on the glass. Right now, at this point, there's no fish. I've transferred the fish to my other tanks. I'm not sure what to do with this tank yet. So right now, I'm thinking about changing it up a bit. Is either this tank or the 29 gallon tank. So these other two tanks I have side by side are my Flex tanks. And the Flex tanks are awesome. Awesome little tanks. I love them. They have pretty good, decent lighting, everything. Easy plants grow on them just fine. I hardly ever had any issues with them. And the same thing, some of the algae that grows on the plants here and there, nothing huge, nothing major. You see some on the glass, but altogether the tanks do very good. This one here has been modified. I've talked about it before. All I have as a filtration system is a sponge filter. I went ahead and removed the baffle that it comes with. So it gives me a little bit of a bigger footprint. When you do that, you gain like maybe a couple inches on the size of the tank, more swimming space for the fish to swim around and for your decorations. This one here on the other side, has not been modified. This one's the one came just like it came from factory with the baffle and the filtration system that it comes with. Mainly guppies. Some of the fish that you see here now are like this Bolivian ram, was in my 20 gallon. Some of the cory cats, I think one of them came from the 20 gallon. So yeah, all my tanks have plants, so that helps with the filtration, as I talked about before. Same thing with algae. You can see a little bit growing on the glass. Nothing major, nothing out of control. A little bit of algae here and there, but nothing to really be worried about. And this one here is my 29 gallon. Sorry about that reflection. And there's red-eye tetras and serpent tetras, along with some corridoras and snails, of course. I have snails on all my tanks. It is planted. It's got a bio wheel, I believe 280 in the back or something like that, and a sponge filter at the corner. This is probably one of my dirtiest tanks right now. I haven't cleaned it for a while, but these are my tanks as they come. I did not prepare, or I did not clean them up to take any videos and post them on YouTube. The one thing I want to talk about is you know, the issues with people having too much algae or algae blooms and water turning green on their tanks and stuff like that. A lot has to do with balance. So too much nutrition, too much lighting, bad water, or water that contains too much phosphates, etc., etc. It could be a number of things. The one thing I recommend doing is keep the lighting down. If you're not in the house to see your fish or look at your fish tank, there's no reason to have your lighting on for that time. You could always put the lights on whenever you come back from work or from school, whatever it is you do during the day. Another thing is you got to keep an eye on feeding. If you feed too much, you're going to create way too much waste in your tank. And of course, if you don't have enough plants to consume nitrates and waste created by your fish and the food, then you're going to have issues. You're going to have issues with algae. Algae is going to benefit from all that waste, and it's just going to grow in your tank. Then the other thing, and this idea is not something, none of these ideas are anything new, but not long ago I was watching a video, and if I come across it again, I'll give credit to the person that posted this video and talked about it. But one of the things that people should be doing when they're topping off is topping off with RO water, reverse osmosis. I use reverse osmosis DI water for my saltwater tank, which I keep in another room. So I do have a unit for reverse osmosis. My RO unit has, I have the option to produce regular RO, which is what I use for these tanks, or I can use RODI. So I have a valve that I close for one and the other. I'll show you that in a minute. But basically, topping up with RO water doesn't add any more TDS, and total dissolved solids is also something else to think about when you keep these tanks. Too much total dissolved solids is an indication of having a little bit too much waste or nitrates in your tank, or something else. It could be anything, basically. So, but let me show you what I use as far as filtration system and what I top off these tanks with. So this is the unit that I use, my RODI unit. It's a bit messy up here, so I don't want to show too much, but I keep it in my laundry room. And these are the valves that I use to switch between regular RO and RODI. So if I close one, then, you know, I open the other one and I get either water from RO or R. The difference is one goes through the DI cartridge, which is that orange looking cartridge right there, deionizer. I believe that's what it is. So it goes through the reverse osmosis. It goes through this is a, let me see, 5-stage system. So it goes through your sediment filter. It goes through activated carbon, block activated carbon, and it goes up to the reverse osmosis, I believe, membrane. And then from there, it either goes to the DI cartridge or this other cartridge on top, which makes the water taste better. So if you're going to drink any of this water, do not drink RODI. Make sure you're drinking the regular RO water. And the reasons for it, you can look them up, but it's not recommended that we drink RODI. Now, RO water is a different story. That's a very typical system in homes nowadays. And every time you create or you make water with these units, you're going to waste probably 3 times as much. So if you create 5 gallons of water, if you make 5 gallons of RO water, you're wasting about 10 to 15 gallons of water every time you do that. And this system is hooked up to my washer with a splitter. That's where I get the water from the cold side, of course. And the wastewater from that unit goes out through the outlet, the same outlet the washer machine uses. So I figured I'd show you what it is that I'm using for RO water. The RODI water is the water that I use to make salt water for this tank, and also to top off. I've had this tank for about 8 years, and it's never seen tap water. This here is the TDS meter. It measures parts per million, and it also measures temperature, I believe. So let's just do a test so I can show you where my tanks are as far as TDS. So this tank right here, I haven't done any water changes, and I don't know if you can read that or not. There you go. So it's at 160. Let's clear that. This other tank is probably going to be the same. 161. I do water changes all at the same time when I do water changes on these tanks. This is my 29 gallon. And let's clear it. Let's clear it up and check to see what the 29 gallon shows. It shows 159, okay, parts per million, which is very good. I say you start to worry about it when it gets up to 400 or 500 parts per million, something like that. Then here I'm going to show you the my 20 gallon, which doesn't have any fish since about 2 weeks ago. It's been empty. And it's got the same 160. Now, that's not going to change unless you do a water change with RO water. Now, regular tap water has probably around 80 parts per million, or 80 to 100 here where I live. This is my 75 gallon. Which has a lot more bio waste, and this one is at 463. So pretty soon this tank is due for a water change. If you give me a second, I'm going to show you what my tap water registers at. Okay, so this is my sink, kitchen sink. This is a clean cup. And it's the tap water ppm, and it's registering about 121. So it is a little higher than I thought, and you got to keep that in consideration. Whenever you're doing water changes and whatever you're using tap water, sometimes that does matter, and especially if you're keeping something sensitive like a saltwater system. I'm going to show you what RO water ppm is and the regular RODI water, actually, I should say. Okay, so I went ahead and poured a little bit of RODI water from my stored gallons or jugs. This is RODI basically, and this is what water registers. 0. RODI water strips every single mineral from the water. Now, this is just an indication that the filters are doing their job. Once they start getting dirty, this starts to go up, and you might see something like 10 parts per million, 15 parts per million, and it keeps going up as the dirtier they get. But even 10 parts per million, it's still very clean water compared to 120 parts per million that I had coming out of the faucet. Now let me show you now what RO water is. And this was here, RODI. Let me show you what RO water registers. Okay, so this is RO water, not DI, just simple reverse osmosis. Let's see what the difference is. As you can see, it's about 7 parts per million. Still very clean water. And like I said, this is water you can actually drink. And if you have one of these systems in your house, a good RO system, drinking water system, will probably register anywhere between 5 and 20 parts per million, at least from what I've seen. That's been my experience. Well, all right, thank you for watching this video. I just wanted to do a little recap on what we talked about and things that I do to keep the algae down in my tanks, which is basically very simple stuff, you know, using RO water for top offs. I don't use it for water changes. I don't think I need to. The plants do need some kind of minerals, and you know, so it's not like it has to be 0 TDS like when you do a saltwater water change. So I'm not too concerned with that, but the top offs will eliminate adding excessive nutrients or excessive minerals to your tanks and harness and all that stuff. Get yourself one of these TDS units. You basically, as you can see, you can tell pretty much where your water's at versus your tap water. And the higher the elevation, the higher the levels, the more dissolved solids are in the water. So it gives you an indication that, hey, maybe it's time to do a water change. This doesn't work with salt water, by the way. This is just for fresh water. But yeah, so your lighting time and your buy load is basically the two most important things you got to keep an eye on. You got to make sure your lighting is not too much. If you're not home, you don't need to have the lighting on if it's not a planet tank. Like this tank back here is not planet. Those, because of the fish I keep in there, I can't keep a planet tank with those fish. So the lighting on this tank is only for me to enjoy the fish. The fish don't need lighting. So I keep that tank maybe at about 6 hours of lighting a day. I'm home, I sit in my office, all my tanks are usually on. These other tanks on this side, these are my planet tanks. So they require, because of the plants there, and it also depends on the plants, of course, but because of the plants, they require a little bit more lighting. Plants do need light. So these tanks get about anywhere between 7 and 8 hours of lighting. I only feed once a day. I feed frozen, and I feed flakes, and I feed pellets, different kinds of food. Don't be cheap on the type of food you put in your tanks. I only feed us a little bit, as much as they can consume within a minute. I don't overdo it. I try never to overdo it, because that creates waste in your tank. And the more waste, again, the more algae. So I don't want to be a slave to my tanks. I want to enjoy them, and I don't want to be doing water changes every week. I don't do that. These planet tanks are every month and a half, 2 months. Same thing with that other tank. And that one I might do a little bit more often, because it's not planet. But they all get a water change basically at the same time for the most time. Again, thank you again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again next time.